changes for clergy, what Pope Francis will allow all priests to do after the Year of Mercy. Building and administration, we tell you who the president-elect met with today. Ending hunger, Bread for the World offers solutions. And welcoming the newest Cardinals, how they represent the church's reach around the world. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, November 21st, 2016. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. The church will allow all priests to absolve the faithful of the grave sin of abortion. This makes permanent the special permission Pope Francis granted for the Holy Year of Mercy, which ended on Sunday. Francis writes in an apostolic letter or papal document made public by the Vatican today, "There is no sin that God's mercy cannot reach and wipe away when it finds a repentant heart." He also writes, "I wish to restate as firmly as I can that abortion is a grave sin, since it puts an end to an innocent life." A top Vatican official says the Holy Father's words apply to all involved in an abortion. This includes nurses, doctors, and those who support a woman's decision to abort a child.
He wants to tell to everybody that there is no at all sin that cannot be forgiven by God if there is a soul which asks for pardon and peace.
In an interview that aired on Italian TV this weekend, Pope Francis calls abortion a horrendous crime. For more now, we go to Rome and our producer Mary Shovlin, who was at the press conference this morning. Mary, why is the Holy Father extending this forgiveness for abortion?
Brian, because abortion is such a serious sin, it has long been the matter for the bishop to handle himself or anyone that he could designate to do so in his name. And we have to remember that this applies to the woman who has procured the abortion or anyone who has helped her to do so, including medical staff. Well, beginning in the Holy Year for 2015, he wanted every priest around the world, not just the bishop or anyone he would designate, to be able to forgive this sin. And he said he wanted to do this so that no one would be denied God's mercy. And so after the Jubilee of Mercy, since it's over, he's, as of today, with this letter, he's now making that permanent. Every priest around the world can hear the confession and forgive that absolution for abortion.
Mary, but aren't most of the world's priests already able to do this?
They are, Brian, especially in the United States. In fact, some people are saying this is largely a symbolic gesture because so many priests are already able to do this. Their bishops have already designated them to do so. But there are some places where this is still not allowed. And so with this letter today, Pope Francis just wanted to make sure that every priest in the Roman Catholic Church could forgive this sin in the confessional.
Also in this letter, Pope Francis reached out to certain traditionalists. How did he do that?
Well, he wanted to make sure that anyone who was frequenting a parish which was serviced by priests belonging to the fraternity of St. Pius X, that they would able to be receive absolution for their sins. This is an ultra-conservative breakaway group in the Catholic Church, a group that the Catholic Church has been trying to reach out to for decades, trying to get unity back with this group, trying to get them back in the fold. So for the Holy Year of Mercy, Pope Francis said that they could grant absolution for sins. And so after the Holy Year, he's still letting them continue. But he said, I'm letting them continue in the hopes that they will still strive for unity with the Roman Catholic Church.
Our Rome producer, Mary Shovlin. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Brian.
President-elect Donald Trump has a busy weekend of meetings at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, among others, sat down with Trump. Our chief White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn has more.
He was listening to my thoughts and suggestions and where I thought we could put our priorities.
Meetings with the transition team continue today at Trump Tower in New York. Attendees include one candidate for the position of Secretary of Veterans Affairs, former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown.
Governor Pence, what are you looking forward to today?
It was a working weekend for Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence, meeting with several prominent individuals,
smart and tough,
including both Chris Christie and Mitt Romney.
Appreciate the chance to speak with the president-elect and look forward to the coming administration.
The pair took a break to take time to attend church. Rumors persisted that another nomination would be made, but in the end, no formal announcement.
Mr. President-elect, will you choose General Mattis as your secretary?
All I can say is he is the real deal.
Trump made news in other ways, however, tweeting his objections after a cast member from Broadway's Hamilton addressed Vice President-elect Pence, who was in the audience.
We truly hope that this show has inspired you to uphold our American values.
The president-elect couldn't keep quiet.
Mr. Trump, are you so upset about Hamilton? They were very inappropriate. Thank you.
The same was true on the campaign trail, where Trump wasn't shy about lashing out at the media. But today, the president-elect and his team sat with representatives from the networks: ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox News, and NBC. No word on what they discussed. Brian.
Thank you, Lauren Ashburn. And President Obama returns to the White House after his final trip abroad as U.S. president. His last stop in Lima, Peru, included a town hall at the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru. He spoke about his presidency. He said he avoided ethical scandal by trying to follow the spirit, not just the letter of the law. He also issued a statement of support for House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who faces a Democratic challenger. And he addressed unresolved world issues, including the violence in Syria.
I continue to believe that we did not have a legal basis for military intervention there, that it would have been a strategic mistake.
The president suggests a wait-and-see approach to the policies of the upcoming Trump administration. He also spoke briefly with Russian President Vladimir Putin. A White House aide called that conversation casual. Some other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Investigators believe two gunmen in different parts of the country specifically targeted police officers over the weekend. An officer in San Antonio, Texas, was killed in his squad car. The police chief there says Detective Benjamin Marconi had pulled over a driver to write a traffic ticket. That's when a gunman approached and shot him. Police continue to look for the suspect.
We consider this suspect to be extremely dangerous and a clear threat to law enforcement officers and the public.
Marconi was a 20-year veteran of the San Antonio Police Force. The police chief encouraging other officers to pair up and ride with their partners as that manhunt continues. And a St. Louis officer is recovering tonight from a shooting. The 46-year-old officer was in his police vehicle last night when the suspect pulled alongside him and began shooting at him. The suspect was later killed in a shootout with police.
This officer was not involved in a traffic stop. This officer was not trying to pull this car over. This officer was driving down the road and was ambushed by an individual who pointed a gun at him.
Police tracked down the suspect early this morning. They say he fired at officers again before he was shot and killed. Police say the suspect was wanted for questioning in some serious crimes. Investigators arrest 7 people accused of plotting a terror attack in France. The suspects are from France, Morocco, and Afghanistan. It's believed the suspects were first planning to target the Euro 2016 soccer tournament earlier this year, but then later changed their plans. A suicide bomber hits a Shiite mosque in Afghanistan, killing 32 people. Police say the bomber walked into the mosque in Kabul and detonated explosives. This is the second large-scale attack on Shiites in Kabul in about a month. So far, no group has claimed responsibility. In Iraq, troops fire rockets at a village southeast of Mosul. Iraqi troops have been fighting in that area for the past couple of weeks, trying to recapture those villages from ISIS. Soldiers are now going door to door looking for would-be suicide bombers. More than 140 people are killed in a train crash in India. About 2,000 workers are clearing the tracks at the site of that nation's worst train accident in years. That passenger train was halfway through a 27-hour journey Sunday when it crashed about 250 miles southeast of New Delhi. Hundreds of protesters in North Dakota try to stop construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Dozens were injured when officers used tear gas and water to break up the Sunday protests. One person was arrested. The protesters claim the project hurts the environment and will destroy Native American sites. Experts say Iran is again violating the nuclear deal it made with six world powers, including the United States. Iran is reportedly removing more than the allowable heavy water used to cool reactors that can produce plutonium. This is the second time Iran has exceeded its limits since the nuclear deal went into effect in January. President-elect Donald Trump is critical of the deal, saying he could overturn it. What a banner day on Wall Street today, hitting record highs all the way around. The Dow gained more than 88 points, now trading within 44 points of the 19,000 mark. The Nasdaq rises 47, the S&P 500 gains 16, closing in on the 2,100 mark. As Donald Trump chooses his cabinet, what are his pro-life goals? Will he uphold the Hyde Amendment, which bans taxpayer funds for abortion? Jason Calvi talks tonight with a member of Trump's transition team.
Tennessee Representative Marsha Blackburn is a member of the Trump Presidential Transition Team Executive Committee. President-elect Trump made many pro-life campaign promises. Are they still a priority in this transition discussion?
Yes, they are a priority, and as you look at what are going to be the deliverables for the first couple of years, you're going to see an emphasis on making certain that pro-life priorities are respected with regard to the Supreme Court justices, to the federal bench nominees. You're going to see it play forward as you look at policy that is going to come through HHS or through DOJ, and also you will see a continuing support for keeping the Hyde Amendment language, which is vitally important to those of us that are pro-life.
And predictions, any predictions for the first 100 days as far as a pro-life cause moving forward?
I really don't. I think that what we will do is just see an underpinning of a decision process that is respectful of the life issues.
And one of the roles that you are overseeing is chairing the House's investigation into Planned Parenthood. With a future Attorney General Jeff Sessions, do you see your report that's going to come out at the end of the year leading to charges?
Well, our report from the Select Investigative Panel is looking at the entire abortion industry and also the procurement businesses that have been trafficking or marketing the fetal tissues and the baby body parts. And what we are doing is preparing our report for the end of the year. Your viewers can keep up with us. It is blackburn.house.gov. We have done an interim report. Our final report will be along the same line. And just as we have done subpoenas and we've had a couple of criminal referrals, we've had a referral to HHS on HIPAA violations, you will see us wrap up the report and then make the necessary referrals back to the state's attorney generals or to different divisions of the federal government for further review and oversight. We'll also have a recommendation for legislation for the appropriate oversight committee to take up and bring legislation that will focus on making certain that no one is selling body parts. And it's important to remember, it is illegal to sell a human body part in the United States. You cannot receive a penny of profit. You can donate organs and tissues. You cannot profit from the transaction. It is a felony. It is punishable by 10 years in prison.
Tennessee Representative Marsha Blackburn, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, a big weekend in the Vatican, we return to Rome with a look at the newest cardinals and Donald Trump's presidency in light of Catholic social teaching. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein, for he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Today's responsorial from the 24th Psalm. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Well, there are 17 new members of the College of Cardinals, the body that advises the Holy Father in governing the Catholic Church. They come from some of the farthest corners of the globe. Mary Shevlin takes us to St. Peter's Basilica, where the ceremony was held this weekend.
Pope Francis places the traditional red hat on the new cardinals, then welcomes them with an embrace. In his remarks, he laid out his vision for their ministry. The Holy Father encouraging his new advisors to be merciful like God the Father and to care for those who are suffering. This is the third group of cardinals named by Pope Francis and the first time he has chosen Americans. They are Archbishop Joseph Tobin of Newark, Archbishop Blaise Cupich of Chicago, and of former Dallas Bishop Kevin Farrell, who will now head the Vatican's Office for the Family. Cardinals are usually appointed to the world's largest or historically important diocese. But this time, the Pope of the Peripheries gave a voice to entirely new places like Bangladesh and Papua New Guinea.
It's a great recognition of Bangladesh as a nation, and also the little community that we are.
Whatever we see that needs to be voiced and needs to raise the concern for this and make people aware of it, it is our responsibility.
Francis's picks also show his concern for the church in places ravaged by war and suffering. Cardinal Mario Zanari has been the Pope's ambassador in Syria for the past 8 years and has refused to abandon his post despite the violence. Zanari says the red hat he wears now also represents the blood of all the innocent people that have died in Syria. After the ceremony, Pope Francis brought the new cardinals to see Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI at his residence in the Vatican Gardens. Pope Benedict greeted each one in the chapel, prayed the Our Father with them, and gave them his blessing. The role of cardinals is to advise the Pope and to elect his successor. 13 of the 17 new cardinals are under 80 years old and thus eligible to vote for the next pope. Francis has now appointed 44 of the 120 cardinals in the church. In Rome, Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly.
Will pro-life voters who put aside moral concerns about Donald Trump live to regret their decision? Stephen White is a fellow in the Catholic Studies program at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He authored Red, White, Blue, and Catholic. Now, you've said that Trump's commitments to the causes of liberty and life, I assume religious liberty here, are at the very best one of convenience. Explain that.
Yeah, Donald Trump is someone who talks about issues like protecting human life and religious freedom as sort of a second or maybe even a third language. These are not causes that he's dedicated to personally, deeply. He doesn't have a long history of being consistent on these issues. So there's some concern about where he'll go with this. Now, just because he hasn't taken these up as sort of his primary causes doesn't mean that we can't hope for some good outcomes of a Trump administration, but there will be a lot of vigilance required to make sure that we sort of hold his feet to the fire and that we get the results that Catholic voters were hoping for when they elected him.
All we really have to go on right now, Stephen, is his choices to head, the different cabinet positions, and we don't know too many of those yet. What do you think his direction shows you about that commitment to these issues?
Well, as you said, the cabinet's not really filled out yet. So we'll have to see where he goes. And, he put together a pretty good advisory committee during the campaign. We'll see how much he listens and how well he listens to those advisors as he begins governing. And again, vigilance is the key word here. He's not going to do a lot of the things that pro-lifers would like him to do, for example, without sort of having his feet held to the fire. So we've got some opportunities on Supreme Court justices. We've got some opportunities on repealing the HHS mandate. There are a lot of things that can happen, but they're not going to happen without vigilance.
So he's toned down a bit, but there was some pretty inflammatory rhetoric during the campaign. Does that keep him from speaking authoritatively on issues such as immigration?
Well, I think there's a certain degree to which it has a certain appeal because it cuts through sort of political correctness, okay? So I think there's a part of the appeal of Trump comes from that. But there's a difference between not being politically correct and flirting with sort of racist and ethno-nationalist rhetoric. This is really dangerous. Not only is it politically dangerous because it can discredit him and all of those who have supported his candidacy and now his presidency, but it deepens divisions within our country, and that's really, really a problem. It's something that Catholics, again, need to be vigilant on, hold him to his word and keep him on the straight and narrow.
What about his economic policies? Do you see him being an ally of church teaching here?
We'll see. He's been, like a lot of things, he's been kind of vague on this. It would be nice to see economic policies that can help sort of the American middle class that's been hurting. So the working middle class, lower income middle class workers. That's a part of the American body politic that's been ignored for a long time. He obviously got their attention in this election.
And so he got elected.
Whether he'll be able to turn things around for them, we'll see. But I think that's a good place to start looking.
Very good. Stephen White's book is Red, White, Blue, and Catholic. Stephen, we appreciate you joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Up next, we talk with the president of Bread for the World about how to end global hunger. Pope Francis closes the Holy Door at St. Peter's, ending the Year of Mercy. Pope Francis closes the Holy Door at St. Peter's Basilica Sunday, formally ending the Jubilee Year of Mercy. He stresses reconciliation and forgiveness, urging us to never close our hearts to God's mercy. The Year of Mercy, which began last December 8th, drew roughly 20 million pilgrims to Rome. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. In the Holy Father's letter closing the Holy Year of Mercy, Francis calls for a new day on the liturgical calendar. The World Day of the Poor will be observed on the Sunday ahead of the feast of Christ the King. This day is meant to help us reflect on how poverty is at the heart of the gospel. A new report says the international community must step up its response to end hunger in fragile states to make progress against poverty. The report from Bread for the World, a Christian group that raises awareness and lobbies Congress, says ending poverty is a goal within reach. David Beckman, president of Bread for the World, is joining us tonight. What are the fragile states and how did they hamper us from really addressing poverty?
Well, I think maybe the prior point is the point that we can virtually end extreme poverty, maybe by 2030. Pope Francis thinks that's possible. All the governments of the world have said, let's try to do that. The World Bank thinks it's possible. But a lot of the progress that's being made against poverty, really unprecedented progress, is being made in countries that have pretty good governments, peace. And we know a lot about how countries like Ghana or Brazil can make progress against poverty. And then there's another group of countries that are really being left behind, where you have widespread hunger and poverty, and it's compounded by violence, climate change, poor governance. And if we're going to end extreme poverty or come close to that, we've all got to pay more attention, have some mercy for the some 300 million people who live in those fragile states.
And you would look at Syria, which is even beyond fragile. I mean, it's
Right.
war-torn. Is there any way to really address hunger in those situations?
Well, Syria is an extreme case, but even in Syria, it's not everybody's living in Aleppo. There are people in the refugee camps along the Turkish border, and there are people in places of relative calm. And the rest of the world is providing food assistance, emergency assistance to those people, but we don't always give them enough. So in fact, there was a point at which the World Food Program had to cut back on rations of food, and the next month is when the mass migration started to Europe. So even there are things we can do. But then there are places like Guatemala, small countries, where there's a lot of violence, a lot of poverty. In those places, there's a lot that we can do. Outsiders can help to encourage peace. There you have a lot of gang violence, so help just with policing and then efforts to reduce poverty.
How does your group work with the Catholic Church? I understand you've met with Pope Francis.
Well, briefly, but I have been to the Vatican. I'm a Lutheran pastor, and Bread for the World is broadly ecumenical, but I love Pope Francis. You know, he's urging people all over the world to pray for the end of hunger, not just pray for hungry people, pray for the end of it and work for it. So I went to the Vatican a couple times last year and had an opportunity to speak with people who advise him, and then this summer went back and had a chance to meet with him briefly, and he spoke out about the fragile states actually at the World Food Program, and he said instead of just giving enough money so that we can maybe keep some of these people alive, we should also make it possible to help people get on their feet and be able to make a living.
Something we can all work on together. David Beckman, Bread for the World, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ryan.
And thank you for joining us. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night. God bless.